Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Clay. We will now have citizens' time, if anyone signed up for citizens' time. No. There appears no one has signed up. Is anybody here that wishes to speak during citizens' time? If not, we will close citizens' time. Next on the agenda is the EMS discussion, and that will be by Mr. Charlie Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Good evening, folks. Mr. Stevenson asked that I come tonight to speak with you all to present a recommendation for what we think is the proposal to...
I asked you to fill us in where you was. You gonna hang me on the wall? Put it.
No, I'm not gonna hang you on the wall. For the benefit of those of you who weren't here in the last administration, and for Sean, I want to start out by giving you just a little quick history of what's brought this thing to where it is right now, okay? Folks, back in 1991, when I took over as emergency management coordinator here, everybody was volunteer. We had some of the most outstanding volunteer fire and EMS people you could ask for. And as I think most of you are aware, I was a first responder for almost 50 years. I'm still a paramedic. I was Captain Marion Life Saving Crew for some 20, and a lot of the folks that are now in EMS are folks that I initially trained when they were kids, unlike me. I say that to say to you, this county has been blessed with some of the finest people you could ever have that have served us as volunteers. The other thing that I can say to you is this. These folks that are still volunteers have a tremendous amount of pride of what they do. They have a tremendous amount of pride with their organizations. It means as much to them as it does their churches, because it's been a calling and they put their hearts and souls into running these departments and taking care of these citizens. When we first recognized the fact that issues were starting to occur, came about in two ways. Number one, your town managers were coming in and saying, we're doing too much in the county, you're not giving us enough, we need more money. The second thing that happened was when Saltville Rescue Squad walked in and said, we've got enough money to operate for about 3 more months and then we're out of business. This certainly got the attention of the Board of Supervisors, as you can imagine, because of the responsibility of taking care of the citizens, keeping the county safe, and here you go. The 911 committee met, we talked about what could be done, and I actually made a recommendation that we put out an RFP to independent agencies just to get an idea of what it would cost if we hired someone to come in and do this job. And those costs ran from $2 to $5 million, and they would not have come close to providing the level of service that we needed, and that was just strictly EMS, by the way. The $2 million, they want to put 2 ambulances, that's all, in the county, and take care of things. And of course, one of the problems with that is, once they decimate your system and come in, then next year they can pop up and say, you know, we think we need like 15% more, and what are you going to do? Because there you are. And we realized very quickly that that was not a satisfactory thing to do. It wasn't in the best interest of the county. At that point, it was decided that we should look at, study, and come up with some kind of a plan that would provide sustainability of our resources, that would be at a reasonable cost, and could conceivably take care of these issues. And an ad hoc committee was formed. David Haynes and I were given the nod to get into this, and we were told to do it with due diligence and look at everything. in all honesty, the hours that have been put into this, the research that has been put into this, would have probably cost you $50,000 or better if you'd hired a consulting firm. But Michael Carter and Bill Rush both made the comment, which I thought was rather gratifying, that between David and myself, we had about 100 years' experience. We knew the county, we knew the people, we knew the equipment, and it made much more sense to ask us to go out and do this and try to put the proposal together. I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. I'm not going to tell you everybody's going to be happy with it. One of the things that does bother me is that, yeah, we are going to have to look at some agencies no longer functioning as 501c3 corporations, which is what a bunch of us did. When Chilhowie got into the spot, they took over EMS, and David was there, and he was involved in that transfer, and he's been involved with having EMS and fire together since. When Marion got to the point that we could no longer sustain with volunteers, I was the captain, and I was the one that was responsible for making the integration from EMS over to fire and turning everything over to the town of Marion. So David and I both have experience in these things too, and I don't know how many people do, but believe me, we have been there, done that. What we have come up with is what I think is a great plan, because it helps us to retain as much autonomy of the departments as we can without taking away their heart and soul. The county will not be taking over fire and EMS. These departments will still operate, but the county will be substantially funding them to assure the continuity that we have to have. Our initial plan called for 3 municipalities to have all the service. We were looking at Saltville, taking over their EMS agency, putting it under the town hat. Chilhowie, taking over AdWolf, which they're in agreement to do. And Marion, taking over fire in Atkins. Now, when I say taking over, what I'm talking about is the operation and ownership comes under the municipality rather than the 501c3 corporations, because you all are giving out money to this department, that department, this department. No idea what was going on. There really was no way to track a lot of the things that were happening. Unfortunately, and I really hate to say that, Roscoe, but unfortunately, after we put this plan together, the town of Saltville came in and said, we are absolutely not going to take over our EMS agency. We'll keep our fire, we won't take over EMS. At that point in time, we had to go back and say, okay, we got to regroup, because now this has to fall under 2 municipalities, which means Chilhowie would have to take over EMS for Saltville. Chilhowie would have to take over Nebo as far as EMS is concerned, because, you know, Saltville said no. Now, my side of that is, I think Saltville's going to lose a lot of money, because there would have been a lot more support had they done that, but they have their reasoning, and it's not up to us to question that. So, we have 2 areas that have been brought up in board meetings before that are underserved, one of those being Nebo, and the being Sugar Grove. We have an issue there. And if you'll look at this plan, what it basically says at this point is this: Chilhowie would take over the AdWolf Fire Department area. Now, that doesn't mean Chilhowie's taking over AdWolf. It means that their administration would come through Chilhowie. They would take Saltville EMS and Nebo. AdWolf would be tasked to provide fire service to Sugar Grove.
Excuse me, Charlie.
Yes, Judy.
I know you spent a lot of time in preparing this document. I don't know the pleasure of the board, if sometimes it's good to have a walkthrough.
I'm going to do that.
Okay. Are you going to do that?
I'm just trying to tell you where we're going first, and then
That's great.
how to get there,
Yeah.
okay?
And they may not need it, but, you know, I didn't know.
But anyway, you would have Marion with Atkins, and Marion taking over EMS for Sugar Grove. Nebo, Sugar Grove are terribly underserved, and Lori's been extremely concerned about the service in that area, which she has pointed out numerous times. We tried to look, first off, at what would be the most efficacious way to handle Nebo and Sugar Grove, because with as few calls as they have in Sugar Grove and Nebo, you can't really put a full ambulance crew over there 24 hours a day. So what we looked at, and I'm giving you this concept before I start into the numbers, what we looked at is providing what we call a quick response vehicle in each of those localities. That would amount to a vehicle with a paramedic, firefighter, 24 hours a day, that would be filled with automated equipment. We're talking about automated CPR machines, we're talking about automated defibrillators, everything. And that person could quickly respond to a severe emergency and sustain life by utilizing drugs and fluids and everything else they needed until such time as an ambulance can get there. So those are the solutions that we've looked at there. In Sugar Grove, that could also be supplemented by volunteers who would want to help, but there would still be some 24-hour coverage over there, which would make sure that Sugar Grove people had emergency care. So, with that being said, now we'll go in here step by step going through this so that you can understand what we're looking at and where the bottom line would be. If you look on page 1, which says Eastern Smyth County, this plan calls to add another ambulance to Marion, put one in Atkins, and a quick response unit in Sugar Grove. If you look at estimated revenues right now from billing, from what the town gives to their departments, from what we would estimate could pull in from Sugar Grove, we're saying about $707,443 that they would be bringing in as far as revenue is concerned. Now, folks, you need to understand, fire doesn't make any money. And where you have joint departments, the money that's brought in by EMS is pretty much supporting their fire service. Okay. Now, we come down to what we're looking at in the proposal. For the eastern part of the county, there would be 12 firefighter, paramedic, or EMTs hired. That's the cost. Taking into that, there's consideration of leave, what retirement costs, health insurance, all the other expenses involved in personnel. You drop down to the current EMS budget for the for Marion Fire and EMS, they end up with a shortage, with this done, of $921,862. Now that is when we walk in and say, here are 12 people. Now,
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
I don't want to slow this up.
No, this is really important, so this is the opportunity to
It
ask.
would be easier for me if I could, some things that's way out there, if I
Yeah.
could just
please do, sir.
make sure I understand. You're talking about hiring 12 more people for the town of Marion, am I hearing it correct?
We're talking about 12 people that would be for Marion, Atkins, and Sugar Grove.
But 12 new people.
Yes, sir, and in the total of this, there's 24 people proposed to be hired, folks.
And
I
why would you want to add, do you not have enough ambulances in Marion? Why do you want to add another?
Well, I said ambulance, we're talking about staffing, I apologize. I'm not talking about, I misspoke right there.
Well, this is pretty serious, so speak of what
It's very
you're
serious.
doing.
Yes, sir.
So are we talking about getting one more ambulance or not?
No, we're not talking about buying another ambulance. We would take one ambulance and put it in Atkins, but we would staff it in Atkins.
Okay.
Okay?
Madam Chairman, if I can for a second. I see what you're asking. So right now, how many people are employed for the town of Marion Fire and EMS?
Honestly, Laura, I can't tell you that. You remember that one, David?
Full-time?
Yeah, 3.
All right, so those 3 people, is it 12 plus 3, or are those 3 would be these 12? Is that what you're
No, it's
asking?
12 plus
That's
3.
what I'm
That's what
asking.
you're asking.
I'll tell you what I'm getting at.
Sure.
And, dang.
I know,
Mhm.
I know.
You know, you're asking for $2 million here.
Yes, sir.
You better come up with a good way to prove it to me.
Contact.
And, you know, this, for me, if we hand $2 million, if I raise my hand, it's gonna be for the county, not just for the towns.
Fully
You know,
understood,
if
sir.
you're gonna hire 12 people and stick them in the town of Marion, I got a problem with this right off the bat.
Well, you wouldn't have 12 people. If I can complete the whole thing, I think you'll understand how this all
Well, I
fits
just-
together, because
I-
everything here is countywide, okay?
I'll let you complete it, I just want to
Okay.
make sure I'm where you're at is.
Those 12 people would come under the administration of Marion, okay? You're gonna have another 12 people that would come under the administration of Chilhowie, but that's to cover Saltville, that's to cover Nebo, that's to cover Adwolf, that's to cover Fire and
These
Sugar
12
Grove.
people are for the whole county, not just for the eastern part.
Basically, yes, sir, okay?
Okay.
But what would happen is this: the people would be hired by the departments. They wouldn't be hired by the Board of Supervisors. They'd be hired by the departments. The reason you have to go under the municipal umbrella is this: utilizing volunteers. And I can use Saltville as an example. They were utilizing folks, they were paying them by the hour. Once they hit 40 hours, they were having to pay them overtime, which is costly. The reason for saying we would have to have jointly trained people is very simple. It falls under the Federal Labor Standards Act. And if you are a jointly trained firefighter medic, you can work 53 hours without overtime. Here's where the real benefit comes in, folks, is David can tell you because he's the real expert on this. In most professional departments, you got firefighter medics that work 2 24-hour shifts, okay? They're done. And they go out and they find another job somewhere because they can't survive on that. But if we have these people hired, 12 by Chilhowie, 12 under the Marion umbrella, they can work 53 hours. They can leave Chilhowie, they can go to Marion and work.
So
They don't
you're
have to get
Are
another
you
job.
talking about 24 or 12? You said
12,
12 for
24,
Marion, 12 for Chilhowie.
anything over 53 hours, they can't do. But if they worked 12s or 24s, which, 2 24s is 48 hours, they're bumping right on that 53. Once they work that, if they work 2 24-hour shifts, they could go work another department, take a day off and go work another department. So that way they really are fully employed with being able to work more than just 2 days a week. If you don't fall under the federal labor standard, the way I figured this is, you'd be paying some 16,000 hours of overtime, which would be a horrendous amount of money to have to pay individuals just for overtime. That's why the municipal umbrella becomes important in making this work, because it saves money in addition to which it gives you full staffing. Now, I understand exactly what you're saying right there about you're not going to like having 12 people being hired from Marion, but that's not how it would work, because you're going to have, with those people, you're going to have 24-hour coverage. You're going to have firefighter and medic in Atkins, 2 people in Atkins, 24 hours a day, running EMS and fire, which is something you don't have now, okay? You would have that quick response vehicle in Sugar Grove 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is coverage you don't have right now. The same thing with Chilhowie. They would have enough staffing to have a unit in Saltville 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the other advantage to having these folks jointly trained is, as Dr. Bruzo pointed out so succinctly, you put firefighter equipment and air packs on an ambulance, and if they're the first ones to respond, they're firefighters, they can conceivably save a life because they've got the gear they need to go in and get them right then, provide medical service until the fire department gets there. So what we're really looking at right here is enough people to be able to staff these stations 24 hours a day and be always guaranteed you're going to have a firefighter paramedic there all the time, which is something we don't have right now. It just doesn't exist because it's being supplemented. It's tough sometimes. The rescue squads don't have enough people to make a call, but when you put all this together, you know you're going to have enough trained people throughout the county that you can pull from the station and get somebody. You're going to be able to keep this thing operational.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a
Yes,
question?
yes, please.
What happens right now when you can't make a call? Are you not making calls?
It happens.
Excuse me?
It happens.
It rolls over to.
rolls over to an ambulance service, which probably isn't available, and rolls over to another ambulance service, and then a response that's needed in 5 minutes, maybe 45 minutes before they can find somebody to get there.
Or an hour and a half, and then they die,
Yeah,
which has happened.
you're exactly right, Warren.
One more question while I'm at it.
Yes, sir.
What's the difference of these people working for the town of Marion and working for the county? Do they still not fall under the same municipality?
They do. But does the county want to take on a bunch more employees and
I
have
don't
to
know what the
administer?
county wants to do. I'm asking questions so I'll know what I want to do.
And it's 24, not 12.
Well,
Yeah.
12 it is.
24.
That was
It's
my,
work total.
that was my other question.
Yeah.
Are we talking about
24.
12, we talking about 24?
Well, we're going to split hairs on that one. It depends on how they want to set up and schedule. Okay? You know, if departments want to work 12 or 24.
24 funded positions.
24 funded positions, yeah, is what we're talking about. Whether they work 12 hours or 24 hours, Marion right now, their folks work 12-hour shifts.
So you're talking about putting 12? Something I need to hear? All right, lay it on me.
Well, I had a legal question I was going to ask, but I hate to interrupt you. But
Go ahead.
Have you looked into any legal ramifications of having one town operate the EMS services of another town? And whether or not that's allowed by Virginia statute or regulation?
Virginia statute, I don't think there's a problem with that whatsoever, because actually the county is the one that gives the authority to operate those services in any area of the county. If you'd like to look in the code on that, I believe.
But I don't know that your plan says that.
Well,
The plan seems to say that the towns are going to be in charge.
That's the way I read it.
Yeah,
Good
that's-
question. Thank
yeah.
you. And I wasn't trying to be rude, I just.
No, that's
I
fine.
what you had to say.
You and I are on the same page.
okay. We're not trying to put this to look like the towns would be in charge. This would just be a part of the EMS system that the county is supplementing, okay? But the county, to hire these people, you got one problem right there, because if just the county hires these people, they can't go work in another department. Would I not be correct on that, David?
There is an advantage to two separate.
Yeah,
But how could Marion people go work at Chohawi?
That's right, good question.
they could, very simple.
Two separate
But how,
employers.
so they can't, the account person can't go work for Marion, but a Marion person can go work for Chohawi. How does that?
No, that's not right, Laura.
Well, that's the question that was just asked, and you said no.
Yes,
I
Mr.
think I understand where you're going for. If you look at it from a corporate entity here, you're looking at the county as an overburdened county entity. From what I'm understanding you to say is you're going to split them between corporate entity A and corporate entity B. They're separate tax ID numbers, they're separate entities, therefore you're limited to the
53 hours.
hours in Company B. When you hit that threshold, you can say, I'm going to go down the street and moonlight at Company A, and I got another 53 hours I can run through without triggering any federal labor laws.
Exactly. Sorry if I didn't present
Because
that
they're
well
two
enough.
separate business entities, i.e. tax IDs or
Right,
whatever. It's
right.
different than going to McDonald's and working your 40 hours and going to Hardee's working 40 more.
Yeah, yeah.
We're just talking the rescue squad. Am I?
Thank you, that clarifies, Dr.
Okay.
Allen.
Do you have another question, sir?
I do, but I would need to do some research.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
seeing it for the first time, that's why.
All right.
So, am I capturing what you're trying
You
to say?
got it exactly, Chris.
Hardee's, McDonald's, two
Exactly.
separate corps?
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, that's the reason why you put them under those two municipal umbrellas, okay? The biggest thing that the county gains right here is, number one, making sure the citizens are safe and the departments are funded properly. Number two is, when you've got this much skin in the game, you also will be able to take a closer look at what's going on. Let me give you an example. We have 10 pieces of fire apparatus in this county that really aren't needed, because every station's been, I want this, and they've gone out and bought it. Let me tell you how much worse it gets. They never get together to look and see what the other has,
Yeah.
which means that there is no continuity in equipment. One of the things here, with part of the funding you're giving being for equipment, we would want it set up so that there was a review of any equipment purchased over such and such a price, to make sure that it was something that was going to be compatible, and that we start buying compatible equipment all over the place until we end up with all of the departments being able to function together with compatibility. The other advantage you do have to having the guys that are in Marion turn around and go to Chilhowie or go to Sugar Grove or go wherever, is that they learn the county, and they learn the people, and they get to work together. And so it makes a much more congruent situation when you have an opportunity for all of these units to come together for some reason or another. If you look at the Western Smyth County plan, once again, we're talking about staffing. We're not talking about buying more equipment. We're talking about staffing. The only equipment that we're talking about vehicle-wise that's going to have to be bought out of this will be the quick response vehicles. Okay, otherwise the equipment's here. So we're talking about staffing. One of the things...
May I
Yes,
ask
sir.
another question,
Yes,
please?
yes.
And I don't, it takes me a while to go over paperwork. How much money did the county give the eastern side this year?
Generally, you all been given $25,000, $26,000 per
We raised it
department.
quite a bit.
That's 11 departments, David, if I'm not
It was
mistaken.
more, it was
I know they asked.
Did more
for
this
it,
year.
so
fire and EMS.
Yeah, you did more this year.
We did.
It was,
I think Sean will have the exact numbers, but we did that looking toward having to fund these services more, and we know that's coming, so.
I know we give more, I just
Yeah.
don't remember.
Sean will have the exact numbers. No, because we didn't have that much money. The total request was 800 and some thousand between the three localities. And I know it was about 800, over 850, I think. And I know we did about half that, Sean, is that correct?
And in the past, honestly, up to that point, it's been $25,000, $26,000
Yeah,
per department.
but we knew we were gonna have to start to increase it.
Marion is getting 85,000, Chilhowie is 92.5, Saltville, 55,000, and there's some, we don't have a breakdown of the, for the other volunteer rescues, but there's 75,000.
I think they're 33.
75.
I want to say they're like 33.
Thank you, Mr. Yates.
That's just for, that's just for.
I was finishing your sentence.
Yes.
That's just.
Yeah, see, that's just it.
I finished your sentence and I said the.
I need help finishing my sentence.
$7,000 total.
I know this is a lot to digest, and I know you're going to want to take it home and sit it down and look at it, and then come back and ask some more questions. I was just trying to give you an overview.
I
Ma'am?
have a major question.
Okay.
The town of Marion has said the whole time, they don't want anything to do with it. So has that changed?
Town of Marion hasn't said that to us.
Okay, well,
The only thing the town of Marion has said to us is, we're not going to be on board unless we know the county is going to follow through with it.
well, they've told me personally, we don't want to do it, we want the county to do it. So,
Well, if the county wants to do it and take over everything, you don't have enough money to buy it.
how would that look any different from this proposal?
Well, it would look like probably $10, $15 million, because you'd have to buy the buildings, the equipment, everything that's with them.
I'm sorry. To me, that's pretty sad.
It is.
You know, I don't care if you're a town of Marion, I don't care if you're a town of Chilhowie, I don't care whose building it is. We're here to serve people.
Right.
And you gonna tell me, if you don't get your way, or the town of Marion, or whoever don't get their way, and you're gonna charge me some lump sum. And I'll be right up front with you. I'm no attorney. Them's the people's buildings, and we're here to make, if we're here to do the right thing, you know, you're talking about $2 million a year. And I'll be danged if I hand it out. I guarantee you I'm gonna have something to do with it as far as my vote goes. Now, my vote may not be majority, but my job is if I hand out $2 million, the county gonna have some hand in it. Not town of Marion, not Chilhowie, the county, and we're all Smyth County. And I'm jumping ahead, I just wanna tell you where I am. I listened to you when you called me the other
Yes, sir.
night, and you're gonna listen to me tonight. And, you know, the town of Marion handed down 105,843, or that's funds from the town of Marion. We give them $85,000. Now they want 921. And I get where the money is going. I get it. But it sounds to me, and you just made the statement, if the county buys it, they're gonna have to buy this, or they're gonna buy that. Well, the town of Marion's wanting to stick the majority of them 12 people in the town of Marion. I don't say it well with me.
Okay, well, first off,
Now, I may not understand, so I just want to
A lot of
understand.
that equipment that they're talking about was bought with county money too.
that was,
So you got to take that into consideration.
I don't know. You know, I don't know if the town would say, here, we'll give you our buildings, our equipment, you take it and operate it. I don't know if the towns of Saltville, Marion, or Chilhowie would do that. Okay, that's where I'm coming from. I don't know that they would do that. We were asked to get a proposal together that would say, here's what you can do to protect. This is not set in stone. This is not something everybody likes, I can tell you. I'm already having people say, you want to do away with Saltville Rescue? I'm saying, no, I don't. I want to see Saltville involved. And they could still operate as being Saltville Rescue, but the big advantage I see with you folks is, when you put this much in the game, then you're also going to want some oversight, and you would be due that oversight, which I 100% agree with.
So to justify what you're saying, because I feel the same way, how do we know that there's not $200,000 extra dollars that they're getting from billing that we're not being shown and they're using it to fund another department?
Good question. We see,
If the
Yeah.
county did it, and I'm not saying shut down everybody, but if the county did it as an umbrella, so the county is the funding organization, everybody still functioned, but obviously it's gonna have to be funded more by the county, but we still have the, I don't wanna say the full control, but you see what I'm saying?
we
Like, it would-
know where the paperwork is, what dollars come in, what dollars go out.
So
Is
it
that
would
what you're
be-
trying to say?
sort of.
But I think we only have one piece now. You know, how much is the alternate plan going to cost? And what are the agreements and what are the advantages and disadvantages? I think we have a lot to look at. This is just the first step.
You've got a tremendous
We
amount to
do,
look at,
and
and
plus
we
we're
were
looking-
asked to bring a proposal. There's not a thing here that is etched in stone. There's not a thing here that everybody's going to like, I know that. But what we had to do was look at this from the standpoint of the county does not now own fire EMS. You don't.
I appreciate you answering that. Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
we may be here at midnight, but this is $2 million.
It
This
is.
what we
Yeah.
get paid for.
yes.
It is.
yes.
And the only way for me to understand anything is ask questions.
Yes, Jimmy.
And,
This is what this,
You know,
this,
as we go, I know it
presentation's
could
for.
go a lot quicker, and I'm not saying, you know, I'm with trash is, I just want to know the ins and outs of every bit of it.
I don't disagree with you at all, Phil, not at all. Okay, I really don't. I wish these apartments could just continue to operate as they have.
Mr. Harrington, I'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to ask you a question. And first of all, I want to thank you all for your hard work on this plan, because I know there's countless hours have gone into working on this. And I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going to pull my mask down. You said that they could work up to 53 hours, so, and I know coverage is a real hard thing, especially when people are sick or got medical emergencies and finding people to get coverage. With that being said, and I just want to ask you a question. If, for example, let's say we had somebody at Marion who worked Monday and Tuesday, and you said they needed to take a day off, and let's say they put in 2 24-hour shifts like you talked about, would they be able then to work, if you had a need some other part in the other part of the county, they could come in and work?
Yes, they could.
They could do 2 more 24-hour
They
shifts?
certainly can. But the
Okay.
only way they can do that is, like Chris pointed out, if it was all just under the county, they couldn't do that. Once they hit that 53 hours, if they want to do that, you're paying overtime.
Because that's 2 separate employers, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why we actually want it to be 3 separate employers, but that's why it's 2 separate employers, because conceivably, you could save 16,000 hours of overtime pay by putting it under those 2 umbrellas.
Mr. Harrington, this is the first time I've seen this plan, and I'm not an employment law expert, so I would like to have the opportunity to make sure that that is accurate. Have you run that plan by an attorney to see if you can mix or match municipal employers like that?
Mr. Haynes, would you like to address that? I have personally not. We have thought this is a proposal.
While I'm skeptical, I don't currently have an opinion because I haven't had time to research it, but I'm just curious.
Mr. Haynes is pretty much an expert on this side of the coin.
Hold up on the word expert. One thing to make clear, I don't think we're talking about one person holding 2 full-time jobs.
No.
So typically what you see is you have and they're 56-hour employees, under FLSA.
I'm sorry, I said 53.
Well, I know, they typically, if you work on 56 hours in a 3-week cycle, you owe 9 hours overtime, so what most people do is give them 9 hours off one of those days. Typically, what you see is they'll work their 56-hour work week for their full-time employer, and you're seeing these people move to other similar agencies. We do it, a lot of our part-time employees work for the city of Bristol. So they're working that 56-hour work week in Bristol, and they're part-time employment with the town of Chilhowie. It's not, Bristol's not, doesn't owe them overtime because it's a separate entity. Now, the 56-hour work week, it has to be a town, city, or county. It has to be municipal government. They have to have the legal authority to do fire suppression. They have to be trained in fire suppression. So there's 4 criteria. There's one other one. There's 4 criteria that these people have to meet to fall under that FLSA exemption to go from a 40-hour employee to a 56-hour employee. I don't think we're talking about one person holding 2 full-time jobs. What we're talking about is you could be a 56-hour employee for the town of Marion, and you could come to the town of Chilhowie and work a part-time shift. And Marion is not on the hook for, and where this question came from, Aaron Sizemore asked me in a previous meeting, he said, is there an advantage to having 2 separate entities manage this versus one? And I said, well, the one that jumps out is that example right there. So if they're all employed by the county, the only place that they can go to work is somewhere outside the county.
I have a question for you. With this plan you got of hiring 24 new people, do you expect a lot of overtime?
No.
The 56-hour work week, if you're giving them the 9 hours off, assuming you're working a 21-day cycle, and others gets complicated, there is no built-in overtime. The only overtime that comes about is if they work a 24-hour shift and they're...
So you're not expecting overtime?
There is no built-in overtime in the system.
So a lot of these guys do like a lot of people do, they actually go work somewhere to benefit themselves to make a bigger check.
Right.
So who's the primary employer? Because then you get into the contamination of the benefits, like the retirement and health insurance and all that.
Well, in this particular case, 12 of them would be employed by Chilhowie, 12 of them would be employed by Marion.
Okay.
But
Even if they worked a double?
yeah, well, now, no, the ones in Marion, if they wanted to go work in Chilhowie after they worked their shift, they could.
Yeah, but suppose if they worked that threshold of 50 hours, could that get to be a problem?
No, if they work that threshold in Marion, and then go to Chilhowie, which is another employer, that doesn't have an
So
effect.
actually, then it's determined up front that they're an employer of one area or another.
Correct.
And, yeah, and then if they work, that, I would say
Full-time for
that,
one and part-time for the other, basically.
yeah, but they could go over, because right now, according to federal labor laws, things over 29 hours have to be offered benefits.
Well, all these folks don't have benefits because they would be
I
full-time
know,
employees.
but theoretically, if they were working over that threshold in another locality, they're,
We limit our part-time employees.
oh, you do, okay, so that takes care of
That
it,
would be limited.
okay.
But here again, that's why if you put it under the county umbrella, it gets much, much more expensive because
I'd like to know that.
just that fact. Okay, so that's the reason it's structured this way.
Okay,
But once again, it's not hiring 12 people for Marion and 12 people for Chilhowie. It's hiring 24 people that are going to work the entire county. Okay, but you're going to have 12 of them
I don't know how many.
that would show employment with Marion with benefits and everything, and 12 of them that would be employed with Chilhowie showing that, and then they'd be farmed out to take care of these other areas. But it just runs under that umbrella so that the labor standards stay in place.
so would they be considered more like contract workers when they get together?
No,
It's
they'd be employees.
Okay,
Yeah.
A lot of the people that work, Solve Rescue works for Abington.
That's right.
Yeah.
yeah.
This is a
This is
current
common.
practice.
It is, it's very
It's
common
current
practice. Very common practice.
This one thing puzzled me, and again, Charlie, it's a lot of work here and we appreciate it. It's gonna take a lot to absorb all this. We could be here beating this horse all night long.
I'm good with that.
But we started out 2 years ago with EMS. Now we ended up with the fire department in on it, and I ain't figured out how that happened.
Well, first off, Roscoe, when you look at the overall picture, fire departments don't make any revenue, EMS does, okay? That's number one. Number two is, if you look at the federal labor threshold that David was referring to, they have to be able to do both fire and EMS. They have to be certified to do that, to fall under that particular aspect of the federal labor.
Sawball's not.
So,
They're independent themselves, and they don't.
so what you're saying, I'm sorry.
No,
So what you're saying, if the fire department goes out to a wreck, or they go out to put a fire out, there's no compensation back?
What they say, what they think.
You know, they've been volunteers for years. I don't know if Saltville pays their people anything or not. I can tell you what Marion does right now, only because I live in Marion, and David can tell you what Shellhalley does. But if you're in Marion and you're a volunteer, you have to pull 2 12-hour shifts, and you are paid a stipend depending upon your qualifications. It's like $125 to $150 per shift. You're not really an employee. I mean, you're on the road.
I mean, the fire department itself, if you respond to a wreck, or you come to my house to put out a fire, am I not liable, or my insurance for some money funds back to you?
No, you're not.
Really?
If they come in a fire
To
truck.
help them out.
But if they come in an ambulance, you can, right?
Ambulance, yes, fire truck,
Fire
no.
truck, no.
I've learned a lot in the last 2 or
Really?
3 months.
They bring the fire truck when they
But
go.
it's complicated.
Yeah. No,
Fire gets out of control, don't bring it in.
All right, now, what Shellhalley does do is, if they work a hazardous material spill, they can charge for that, but they bill that back to the insurance of the individual that's responsible for the spill. But as far as fighting a fire, if they go out tonight and fight a big warehouse fire, they don't receive any compensation for any of the time that they put into that.
Decisions where we're going.
You spend a lot of time,
Yes, sir.
and,
Will they answer,
You know, I don't-
answer to that person?
They're gonna be the.
have you looked at any other avenues besides
They didn't
this?
have that power, then it would be.
Or is it all based on town of Marion, town of Chilhowee? Are you following my question? Have you looked at any avenues of maybe just upgrading the town of, to a couple more employees and then putting another small station out in the county somewhere? Have you looked at any of those figures, or
Like sometimes.
are we looking at one figure?
You're looking at one figure because we actually sat down, and we sat down with departments, we've looked at equipment, we've talked about how to best cover the county,
This is the.
and this is what we came up with as being the best way to cover at the least amount of money. I mean, that's exactly what we came up with. You know, it's some counties have actually gone to the point they've taken it all over, okay? It falls under the county, but they're bearing the whole expense, the whole administration, the whole everything.
Fire and EMS.
About.
Fire and EMS, yes,
See what I'm
ma'am.
saying?
Yes.
I have a question if I can.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
please.
So the towns are responsible for fire,
That is correct.
and I'm assuming that in this estimated revenue, funds from the town of Chilhowee, funds from the town of Marion, that's currently what they put in
That's what they
now.
pay, yes.
All right, I don't see any funds, oh, yes, I do, here we go, funds from the town of Supv. So how is that number calculated? Was that based on the number of calls within the town, with each town limit, or is that just something their councils decide?
That's what their council allocated to solve the rescue for.
Okay, so when it comes to the value of fire service, I would expect the towns to determine the value of that, because the town citizens pay a higher tax rate for services like that. So
Yeah.
I guess how would that fairly be,
I get the
how would that number be fairly
comes.
allocated to benefit this whole,
I've
this
learned a lot the
program?
last 2 or 3 months.
Like if they come up and say, we're only gonna put $80,000 to it, because the county's gonna pick up the bill now.
Yeah.
Because the towns are responsible for fire, the county's responsible for EMS, so how are we gonna make sure that their fair share is being paid? If there's not some kind of formula that's used for the towns to
No,
There would have to be
right.
create that number, and what does that number look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of work still yet to be
Yeah,
done.
and and Lori, in all honesty, the other thing you have to recognize is this. We're throwing this out as a proposal, okay? You can look at it and say, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this. What do you want to change? The town, the revenues have to be estimated on the EMS side because you don't know how many calls you're going to get. A basic life support call doesn't pay as much as an advanced life support call. You're going to get a lot of calls where you're not going to get paid. So, they have to look at, okay, if Marion runs 2,000 calls a year, then they can estimate we should receive this amount of money, and they'll base the budget on what they're putting in based upon what they're projecting that revenue stream to be. And can that change? It can change drastically.
Sure, for EMS, I get that, but fire specifically, what I was talking about.
Well-
How do the councils determine what they're gonna give to fire?
And I think that's something we're going to have to sit down with, if nothing else, me and the town managers can sit down, or the Smyth 12 group can sit down and start and have that kind of conversation, because as far as I know, I've only been part of 2 of those meetings. In the past, it's always been EMS. EMS has been the issue. If and there's some good reasons why to combine fire and EMS, but if we're going to combine the fire and EMS, we need to combine the fire and EMS mindset, as Ms. Deal said, with the fire in towns usually is a quicker response, because you're paying that double tax. So yeah, I think there's a lot more to work out, for sure.
I have one more question
Our
and I'll ask
taxes need to
one.
No, I
start
think we need to
charging
ask
what they
another
need to do.
question.
Well, I have one that's
Yeah,
right top of mind. Are these ambulances BLS or ALS?
ALS.
Every single one of them? Good.
Madam Chairman, I have
Yes.
2 quick
Dr.
questions, and then
Evans.
I'll be quiet. 2 questions referencing the equipment savings. You said that during the survey, you saw that there was some disconnect with the equipments and interoperability. Do you have a projection as to how long it will take to roll those into one unit or one item will fit in all 3 houses or 2 houses, whatever sites you have, so that we're all working with the same equipment, same version? And if so, what dollar savings might we see? Best guess.
Okay, well, first off, one of the things we discussed was that would basically have to be by attrition. You just wouldn't run out and say, we're going to sell this truck, get rid of this truck. That's not going to happen. But I'll give you a good example of what Chilhowie's doing. David needs a new pumper. He's not going to buy, new tanker. He's not going to buy a new tanker because Adwolf has 2.
Okay.
So he doesn't need one. Okay, so in looking at the equipment, when we're saying that we'll be giving money for equipment, one of the things we do, if they came in and said, we need a new such and such, it would be, well, no, you don't, because it's available right here. But one of the things that happened down through the years with the 501c3 corps and everybody having their departments was a new, for lack of a better word, a new toy would come out. And then everybody think, well, we got to have it. Well, a real good example on that is Jaws of Life. When that piece of equipment first came out, it was like, this is a miracle. And so Marion was able to get hold of the Jaws of Life. Well, Saltville got the Jaws of Life. Chilhowie didn't have it. And Chilhowie had an accident one time where a young lady died, and unfortunately she would have died anyway. But they thought, we got to have this. Well, David can back me up on this. There are 10 steps to vehicle extrication, with the last really being extricating the patient. And in the time it would have taken to have evaluated that person, stabilized that car, and done the things that were needed, Saltville or Marion could have been there. That time, Chilhowie was hurting financially, and they had to go out and beg for the money to get a piece of equipment that quite honestly was available to them, and they could have used their money elsewhere.
And that's ridiculous that we don't
It is.
support each other. in that
Okay,
fashion.
but
Yes.
I think that's kind of what happened, because somebody gets a shiny new tanker, hey, we want one of those too.
We don't need 14 ladder trucks for cheerleaders to ride on
No.
in the parade. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but there comes a point when we stop looking at county lines and we say, hey, somebody has an emergency and we need to go help
I
them.
agree.
Thank you.
The mindset has been, between all the agencies, and and I have 35 years in the fire service in Smith County, the mindset was, everybody had to take care of their own. So we took care of Chilhowie's district, and we bought whatever we needed and didn't worry about what anybody else had. That has changed. It has to change.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make any sense. My department from 2000, the year 2000 to today, we've cut our apparatus fleet in half. But I'll tell you, we're probably twice as capable. So that's what we've got to be looking at. And here's the other thing.
If we spend $2 million, we're gonna be capable, I promise. I mean, we can cut all the bull crap.
I knew that was gonna come.
And, you know, I ain't trying to rush this along, somebody's got questions, but Madam Chairman, I got an idea.
Yes,
We got a new county administrator sitting over here.
we sure do.
He's supposed to be pretty good.
Yes.
Supposed to be, we're gonna
That's a
find
real
out.
sound.
Lori's involved in this, our attorney has some questions, you know, to keep us from being here all night, and I'm not trying to take any questions, but this is where I'd like to see us go. And if you want, I'd like for Mr. Yutt to look into this and get into it deep, and I'm talking about deep as, and you too, Lori, and if we need another committee, whatever we gotta do, if we gotta come up with another, I'm talking about county. I'm talking about, fellas, you're gonna have to excuse me, I ain't got nothing against either one of you, but I'm here for the county, down in Marion, Chilhowee, and the county. I'm talking about a committee for the county with Mr. Yutt. Let's go through this and see if where it weighs. Try to come up with a genius mind. You got $130,000 you make in a year, you ought to have something in your pocket. If there's another way we can go, you know, do we need to go, does this need to be all county? Do we need to hire somebody to overlook this? Now, I told you the other night, I didn't think so. I'm a pretty honest fella. But I'm gonna tell you something. We give town money, $72,000 or $80,000. We're talking about another $900,000. Yeah, it's probably time for a full-time person to oversee where this money's going. Now, let me finish.
Okay.
But I would like to find out all the answers, and I think the best way to find it out is probably, can we appoint another committee from the county?
Yeah.
I know you're passionate.
I'd like to do it.
And put him on it, and one more, Mr. Yutt, and let's dig into this thing with just us. I'm not trying to exclude the towns, and see if we can get a toehold somewhere or another. How do you feel about that, Mr. Yutt?
I agree, sir. Sure.
And, you know, this fella, he has a lot of questions about how many entities we need, or you jump in here if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. You know, a lot of questions about whether we can force one town to take over another town's EMS services.
We need all these
Town to
answers.
accept that service.
So,
And you-
do we need a motion to, well, I think this is kind of a special, yeah.
I think we need a special
I
committee
do.
with just
I
board
think so.
members on it, with Mr. Yutt and the
Maybe the
attorney.
first thing we need to do is find out what we can and can't do from the legal side, so then we know where to go.
So what's your
back.
recommendation, Don?
That's what
Let him do the legal
I'm researching.
I will advise whatever committee
Okay.
the board wants to put together. I don't want to make I recommend that you do put
So
a
I
group
think
together to
maybe
study this
we
and
could
come up
go
with
ahead and
a solution you
appoint a
want.
committee right now.
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
The committee that was already formed for this, like, what's the purpose of it? Like,
This is more of an ad hoc specialized, I think.
that's what that committee was formed for.
There is a board committee that was established, at least on my list.
It was
Yeah.
Tom, Michael, and Rick.
Yeah.
That board has already been formed,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Well,
You just
yeah,
need
I
to-
get
I
what you're
think we need
saying.
to, I think we need to do an appointment.
I'm not saying dissolve anything that we already got out there, because more heads is better than one, but I think we as a board of supervisors ought to come up with, and I don't know the proper name, I'm gonna need some redneck
Well,
help
you
here.
could have an ad hoc committee to review this specific proposal,
I think, Neil, you
And- analyze it, and come up with a counter proposal if you choose. I mean, is that what you think, Sean?
I think that would suffice.
Don't you feel like we need it?
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Yes.
and it's a question I'd like to know, it's kinda out of hand here. And I'm not trying to take nothing away from you, I can read this, and I've got information from you. Our 911 coordinator, where's his job beginning to start? Can he get involved in some of this? I mean, he's got to have some free time.
He has a lot of data
Yeah.
behind.
He'd need to serve on the committee.
I mean,
I think he'd be a staff person that can help too.
I think it's the important part for a lot of people to play different roles here when we get up against the
I think we'll
wall.
come up with the best resolution with that.
So I make a motion that we come up with an ad hoc committee and appoint those people tonight and
Okay,
have them look into this.
And then this would be the ad hoc.
all right,
And then
so
the third person is on.
I think that, I know Lori would like to serve on that.
Sure.
I know that Mr. Sturgill would like to serve on it.
What about, our
Dr.
druggist over here? Would you
Ratliff,
like
would
to be
you
on
be
that,
willing
too?
to be on that?
He's on the other one too.
Yeah, I could, yeah.
So we got
Okay.
three good, and you need a motion on them, on those three, or you can point them, you don't need no motion.
Well, I don't think we do need a motion because it's a
Need
committee.
a motion to form a
To
committee?
form a committee.
I so move and make that motion right now.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? The vote is unanimous.
One thing I would like to point out, though, if I may, sir.
Go ahead.
I'm not here for the town of Marion or the town of Chilhowie. Honestly, I'm here for the county. I
don't doubt that a bit.
You know,
And,
I'm not involved in the operation of any of the EMS agencies anymore, other than in my capacity that I currently have. But I'm only interested in what's best for the county, and that's what we put together in this proposal.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Yes.
I don't doubt that, Mr. Herring, and I got a lot of respect for you.
Thanks, sir.
And I'm not saying you got a bad idea, but I will repeat myself. It's $2 million involved on top of what we already have. And we may have to have that $2 million, there may not be another way. But I want to make sure that we exhaust every way possible, that we use every mind here, that we use every resource we got to make sure when we vote on what we're going to vote on, we've got the right answer.
Yes.
And I don't think it's too much to ask of anybody.
Now, we're talking about a lot of money in a critical service, so.
And I don't disagree with you, sir, whatsoever. What I will say that the last board said was, we don't know anything about fire EMS, you're gonna have to guide us, and that's what we're trying to do.
I didn't know how to fly an airplane, but I learned.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's about EMS, but I'm gonna learn if I live to
Absolutely.
end my term, I'll know.
Well,
So, I'm that nosy.
I've learned a lot in 9 months,
folks, if
10 months.
you want anything from me or from David, if you've got any questions that you want, we'll be happy to answer them. You know, we're the folks that put the data together and that worked with the communities as well as we could. And I'm gonna tell you, it's been like trying to herd cats.
I bet.
It has absolutely been one of the most frustrating things I've ever done in my entire life, because we're dealing with municipalities, we're dealing with boards, we're dealing with volunteers, and I can tell you, David, you'll back me on this, we haven't had one time when everybody was happy,
I'm sure.
and that's just how it's worked out, but we put our best into it, so it's yours. As I said, it's a proposal, nobody's trying to shove anything down anybody's throat, we're trying to tell you what we based it on, and at this point in time, we'll leave it entirely up to you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, sir.
Okay?
We appreciate all your work, Charlie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is the consideration of the no local gun control resolution, and Lori.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As a follow-up to the Second Amendment sanctuary resolution that was passed by this board in December of 2019, there's an additional resolution that several counties and cities across the Commonwealth have recently passed. Those counties and cities include Amelia, Amherst, Appomattox, Bedford, Charlotte, Colonial Heights, Crew, Culpeper, Fauquier, Franklin, Frederick, Fort Hoyle, Goshen, Grayson, Greene, Halifax, King William, Madison, Page, Patrick, Pittsylvania, Powhatan, Pulaski, Rappahannock, Rocky Mount, Royal Retreat, Scott, Southampton, and Spotsylvania and Wythe County. In your packet, you'll see a copy of that resolution, and I will quickly read through that. Whereas in acknowledgement of deep commitment to the rights of all citizens and visitors to Smyth County to keep and bear arms, Smyth County Board of Supervisors previously declared Smyth County to be a Second Amendment sanctuary. And whereas certain legislation has been passed in the Virginia General Assembly that allows locality to, by ordinance, ban otherwise lawfully possessed and transported firearms from certain public spaces, causing law-abiding citizens to be exposed to a patchwork of local ordinances as they travel throughout the Commonwealth. And whereas the Smyth County Board of Supervisors acknowledges the significant economic contribution made to our community by tourists and visitors, and does not wish to discourage travel to Smyth County. And whereas Smyth County wishes to welcome all law-abiding citizens who wish to live in, visit, or otherwise participate in the economy of our community, including those citizens and visitors who choose to legally carry a firearm for personal protection. And whereas the Smyth County Board of Supervisors does not wish to infringe on the rights of citizens or visitors to Smyth County to keep and bear arms, and whereas Smyth County Board of Supervisors wishes to express its continued opposition to any law that would unconstitutionally restrict the rights of citizens and visitors to Smyth County to keep and bear arms. Therefore, now be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of Smyth County, Virginia, that the Board of Supervisors hereby declares Smyth County, Virginia shall not exercise any authority granted to it by 15.2-915E of the Code of Virginia to regulate or prohibit the otherwise legal purchase, possession, or transfer of firearms or ammunition. The undersigned clerk of the Board of Supervisors of the County of Smyth hereby certifies that the resolution set forth above was adopted during an open meeting on August 27th, 2020 by the Board of Supervisors with the following votes. The reason, sorry.
I have one question for the attorney.
Yes.
In December, the board approved the Second Amendment resolution. So how do we need to do this additionally then? What are the differences?
You do it the exact same way.
I know, but if we already have passed a Second Amendment resolution,
So,
what do we add with this?
so what's happened here is that since that resolution, the Virginia General Assembly and the governor have enacted a law that enables counties to have more power to restrict possession of guns in certain areas.
Okay.
So the county does have the authority to add gun restrictions if it wants in limited respects. However, this resolution says that the county is pledging not to do that, not to operate those new authorities. Hopefully I got that right, Lori.
Yes, you did, and one of the reasons that I wanted to go ahead and bring this forth, as if you're following what's going on in Richmond right now, there's a lot of movement to defund the police, and there's ridiculous laws being brought forth to drop the charges to a misdemeanor for assault on a police officer, and unfortunately, I'm a little bit concerned that there's going to become a time that that man sitting right over there in the corner and his fellow officers are not going to have enough respect of authority from people that should respect our police officers, and law-abiding citizens like ourselves who carry and do it responsibly are going to have to start protecting them because of the direction our Commonwealth is going in. So, Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion to adopt this resolution.
Madam Chairman, I'll second, because I agree with her. If the people up Richmond don't change their attitude, we're not going to have any law enforcement.
Right.
No, we're not.
Nobody's going to want to serve.
I agree.
So I wholeheartedly second this.
I support it
You
too.
know, it's going to come a time we're probably going to have to carry a gun. They talking about taking sovereignty away from a police officer, and you can't choke somebody. Hello in the morning. These people at first went crazy.
If you don't want to wrestle with an officer, don't be a criminal.
That's right.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Next on the agenda are some board appointments. The first one is the appointment of an alternate to the New River Mount Rogers Workforce Development Area Consortium Board. And the nominee is Mr. Sean Butt, our county administrator. Do we have a motion?
I also move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Next, we have an appointment to the Workforce Development Area of Mount Rogers, and the proposed nominee is Martha Rasnick. Do we have a motion to appoint?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, Phil, do you want to do
Yes,
your
ma'am,
appointment now?
I'd like to, while we're making appointments, I'd
Let's
like
do
to make
that.
a motion to appoint Christina Long to the library board.
Do we have a motion? I think that's the only position lacking on that board right now to bring it up to 7 members, so that'll be good.
So I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously, and we'll get the information to you. Next are committee recommendations. The first one is a Budget Committee report. It's on pages 4 and 5 of your packet. The Budget Committee met on August the 24th, and I was present as well as Lori. Mr. Sizemore presented a proposed Phase 1 funding summary for the initial $2.6 million CARES Act money, and the proposed 2 spending was also discussed, but that additional $2.6 million cannot be spent until after the public hearing in September to amend the FY 2021 budget. So that will be brought again to the board as we go through that.
Action later tonight.
Yeah. Then Mr. Blevins provided estimates for repairs to the scales at the landfill. The scale failed inspection and will need to be repaired as soon as possible. The estimates for scale repairs were reviewed, and a motion was made by Rock Valley District Supervisor Lori Deal to move forward with a $39,500 quote from Carlton Scale, and I seconded the motion and it passed. However, there's an update on that, and Mr. Utt will update the board regarding it.
So after that committee meeting, we were able to get another quote, better quote of $24,104. And what happened was the Scale Works company, take a step back. So the scale works off of levers. It's a levers system. And the replacement was going to basically turn it into a digital reading system. There were some state requirements that were present previously, a year ago, that were corrected this year in General Assembly, so to basically make it eligible to without having to replace the whole deck. Sorry. And I don't know the full remnants, but basically it was illegal to put digital readings on the deck that we have now. But now it's not. It's safe. It's proven. So the $24,104 quote with the Scale Works would basically turn our scale into a digital readings that where we can just replace one section as we need it rather than having to replace the whole thing as for further maintenance.
So that's a good savings. That's great.
Yes,
So do I need to amend that
Would
motion
you
I made
please?
okay,
Mhm.
so Madam Chairman, I would like to amend the motion that I made in our Budget Committee meeting on August 24th to move forward with a quote of $24,104 from the Scale Works.
Okay, is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Next, the Budget Committee considered a request from Roscoe Call regarding a water tank in his district that was reported to look bad, and he requested quotes to be obtained for having it painted. Mr. Blevins noted that the Health Department had no issue with the water inside the tank. It is just unsightly on the outside. Ms. Richardson presented a quote from the only company that responded, so evidently it was a sole source type of response to the bid request. And the bid was $15,475, which includes labor and materials. Since this was not included in this year's budget, there was discussion about what budget line item the cost could be paid from. Raw Valley District Lori Deal made a motion to approve painting the water tank for the $15,475 by Continental Sandblasting and Painting, that it be paid out of capital improvement funds. The motion was seconded by Judy Wyatt, and it was passed unanimously. So this is a recommendation from the committee.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is that the one there at the Fry House? The metal one, or what tank we talking about?
It's metal.
I know, but is it?
Upper Poor Valley Road. Right there. Side of Bud Fry.
Yeah, so it's the metal holding tank.
Right.
Madam Chairman, if I can add, I also asked Wally the question, I know it's obviously looks bad, but I also asked Wally if he felt like the Health Department would come back this year and say that the quality wasn't good, so he said that he was expecting that. So although right now it's a aesthetics thing, it will be a necessary thing.
It has it's probably got epoxy on the inside that it will take a lot longer to irritate than the inside will probably be good on that, but they are going to sandblast it, right?
Yes.
Okay, my question.
All right, so that was a recommendation from the committee. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next, there was a budget request to transfer funds, $25,000 from the DMV Highway Safety Grant, and it was going to go to $18,000 to part-time salary and wages, $1,400 to FICA, $5,600 to Highway Safety Grant expense. The motion was made by Lori to approve, seconded by myself, and approved unanimously. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. An email was received from the Supv auditors indicating that the county missed a quarterly payment to them back in 2015 in the amount of $12,500. This matter was discussed in previous years but was never brought before the Budget Committee for consideration. After discussion, my Valley District Supervisor Lori Deal made a motion to request Supv to forgive the $12,500 due from Smyth County and credit $5,500 back to Washington County in order to make it equal. I made a motion. I seconded the motion, and it was unanimously approved. Is this a committee recommendation? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Jill stated that the class of 2020 did not get to have a prom due to the pandemic situation, and Marion has one scheduled for September 11th, but still needs $400 to finish paying for the food. The board discussed doing something special for the 2020 graduates at the May 12th board meeting, and Ms. Jill is recommending that the county provide $400 towards Marion's prom expenses. Ms. Wine agreed with that recommendation. After further discussion, my Valley District Supervisor Lori Deal made a motion as something special for the class of 2020. During that meeting, I felt that it was not right to not do the same thing fair and equal for Chilhowie and for Saltville, although, I think one area already had their prom, so it was amended to make it $1,200, and those areas, if they've already had their prom, they can put it in the student activities fund or whatever, but the motion was made and seconded and approved unanimously.
The schools are not sponsoring the proms this year. They're done by the parents outside the school.
Right.
Because we weren't allowed to have, by the rules of COVID,
Right.
congregations like that. So the parents, Chilhowie, the parents of Chilhowie had theirs back a couple of months ago. And I agree 100% with what you said, that if you do one, let's do for all
Yeah,
three.
Wood County, yeah.
So
So-
how could we, may I speak? Since you're in the school system, the ones that's already had their, what could we do with that $400? The activity fund, is it the best place to put it, or call them people back and say, here's your $400, have a party on it? I mean, well, I'm saying all three ought to get the same. I just want to know where the money should
That's the
go.
best way to do it.
In a normal school year, I guess, in a normal school year, then the schools do sponsor the proms. However, this year, due to COVID restrictions, there was no way for a school to sponsor that due to, the rules of social distancing and all that. So the parents, I know in Chilhowie, I think they went down to Glade, I forget what the name of the building is, the senior parents, and they sponsored a prom, which the school system had nothing to do with.
From what I understand.
So what I was going to say is, I'm trying to think in my mind exactly how we could, do it. I'm trying to, maybe we could appropriate the money to the, I'm trying to think from the auditor standpoint too, for the school auditors. If we appropriated the money to the schools, and then like in your situation, the school could appropriate it possibly to the parents. And what I was going to say in the other schools, and I'm sure going forward this year.
It's getting a little iffy.
I know those things can become very controversial.
Can I speak for just a second?
Sure.
Okay, so for instance, for the town of Marion's prom, they actually have a fund set up at it's a separate fund. It's called Prom 2020. So all the money that they've already raised has gone in that fund, and then all the expenses will come out of that fund.
So
For the town of Saltville, I believe they're actually hosting it, so that money would go to Saltville.
have they already had theirs?
No, I think it's coming
That's
up.
Oh, is it? So Chilhowee would be the only one
I think
that's already had
Chilhowiee's
it.
the only one that's done.
So the only one we got a
Roscoe,
problem with is Chilhowee.
I don't think they've had it yet.
I'm not aware of one. And
Do
see,
you-
but that wouldn't come through us because it's not
Okay.
sponsored by the school
Right.
system.
And I know auditors sometimes have a real problem with these separate funds.
I believe Chilhowee,
Here, buddy, I know we're wrong.
They put their pictures up on the football field.
What do you recommend,
So they
Don?
did that.
I recommend
The
waiting
School
to
system
fi-
did, yeah, the schools did that.
I'm sorry, what did you recommend?
I recommend waiting to see who's sponsoring the proms, because I don't think the school is allowed to, is my guess.
The one you're
They're not.
talking about would be for
And-
this past year's graduates.
yes, so,
And so, and I also would say we may want to be careful that we don't, I mean, I don't know what the circumstances regarding these proms are, but we may want to be careful that we're not funding something that's in violation of the governor's order.
it's not.
I just don't know.
Yeah, I concur.
And so that's why I think,
Oh, that's true.
I might want, to,
Yeah.
I'd like to have some more facts before
So
rendering a decision.
With the gathering,
this is the most unbelievable thing to me. Okay, the town of Tazewell, the town of Wyatt, this has happened all across Southwest Virginia. So it's not illegal. They've gone by
Right.
what the VDH has set forth, and they've basically said, here's how you can do it. Tazewell presented their plan to the town of Marion for Marion's prom to this Prom 2020 committee. And they've said, here's how you do it, here's how you social distance, here's how you follow VDH guidelines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, for the town of Marion, for their prom, that one's cut and dry because it's not happened yet. They have an account set up at the bank that's totally set up. As far as how to refund the Chilhowee prom and the Saltville prom, I think we need to approach the towns because from my understanding, they had some involvement in it. So if the town funded it, we would reimburse each town. So for instance, if Saltville is sponsoring the Saltville prom, the $400 would go to Saltville. I'm not saying we need to write 25 different checks to 18 different
Right.
senior moms. That's not what I'm saying.
then it seems lead me with this. The appropriate thing right now, since we're indefinite of how it was handled in the other two localities, is to go ahead and do the one for Marion if we so desire, with the understanding that we are going to make it fair and equal to the other two areas as soon as we come back to our next meeting and have the right.
Yes, I just advise you to find out, who
Yeah.
paid for it, who are the
So
entities.
can we
make sure
do
you-
that?
Sure.
In the motion, Lori?
Sure.
Would you do that?
So I'll amend my motion to provide $400 in funding to the Prom 2020 Committee for the Marion Senior High School Class of 2020 prom that will be held on September 11th. And also have Mr. Utt contact the town of Chilhowee and the town of Saltville to determine how their proms were handled and discuss reimbursement for those two activities at our September 8th meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our
Well-
students will be very appreciative, and prom is a special thing for them to remember, and this stupid virus has messed it up for them. So
Well,
thank you for
as we
making it happen.
said in May, we wanted to do something special for these children. I'm glad that there's this area that we can, and we will do it for all of them, for all Smyth County students to have something. Next was, Lori Hester Deal made a motion to approve the proposed Phase 1 funding of the CARES Act money as presented earlier in the meeting, and I seconded that motion. It was unanimously approved. Does the board have a copy of that, Sean?
You do, and actually, if you'd like to take a minute to
Let's
sign
do,
that,
yeah.
over to that, if you turn over to page, got to put my
8.
cursor on page 8.
Yeah.
You have to turn it a little bit. So as you know, we have $2.6 million in change that's already in the current budget. We've received notice that the town or the county is receiving another $2.6 million. We've actually already received it. It's in our bank account. but it's not in the budget yet. So that's going to be the next phase of what I'll talk about. But what we've put together is the big problem is this money has to be spent by December 30th. So, we're a little bit behind the time a little bit, but we put together a funding plan for each phase of the funding. Of course, one of the requirements is that we share proportionally with the towns. So each town, you'll see at the top there, gets a proportional portion of the funding based on the 2019 Weldon Cooper Center census projections. Yeah, for population. And then we're proposing for the first phase, after the towns, to purchase an additional refuse truck. Where right now we're sharing, we're rotating around among several drivers, just a few trucks. The transport vehicles with the sheriff's office, we have 3 transport vehicles. You may remember some talk in the past about TDO transfers and ECO transfers. There's 3 vehicles and 15 drivers. So we're looking to buy more vehicles to reduce the sharing. What can help later, hopefully, is we can hope that can help the overall fleet of the sheriff's department, vehicle fleet.
Question.
Yes, sir.
What's wrong with sharing?
Well, we're taking advantage of money, basically. There's nothing wrong with sharing. We're taking advantage of trying to make the best out of a difficult situation with, and it's kind of oxymoronic to say it's a difficult situation to figure out how to spend money. But there's only a few ways that we can spend this money to justify back to COVID related. So we're trying to.
Question.
Yes.
How much of it we give the EDA? How much of it can we give them to give businesses?
Well, that's the next thing. That's $300,000 is proposed to give to them for the Smyth Strong Fund for small business grants.
So we can't use that where we're buying cruisers to buy a new rescue squad?
Well, coming on down, the public safety equipment, one potential would be a rescue squad. I know a lot.
The reason I ask questions like that is, you do a TDO or whatever they want to call it, a mental patient. I mean, you're not having 3 cruisers go up a road, surely, at one time. Maybe you are, I don't know. Maybe everybody's going crazy. But, I'd rather see it go exactly where we need it, and other than what we're just, the statement of we've got to spend it, and only certain places we can spend it. If we're going to spend it, let's spend it to where it really counts.
Sure.
Sharing something needs to be done. I get the sheriff's department wants some more cruisers, and we're trying to find a way to get rid of $4 million, but I don't know, it makes me sick at my stomach.
I don't disagree. What we could do is we could relabel that just to include it in the public safety equipment line item and just put money toward public safety equipment and figure out the best options.
I mean, we may need one of those shockers, and we may need to give a rescue squad something. The town of Supv may need something, and we sit here all night and we've talked about $2 million to EM&S, and here we're using COVID-19 money to buy 3 police cars. It don't make a lot of sense to me.
I agree. Okay. We can if you'd like us to relabel, we can surely do that.
Well, I'm only one person here. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Well, it gives you a broader sweep of it, doesn't it, Sean?
Sure.
Yeah.
We're also looking at, and this is a big total, but there's a lot of things included. The county IT, we're looking at one thing that was discovered when we had to close in March, April timeframe. I understand is the difficulty in truly working from home. Not having enough laptops and the capability to do that. So this is the purchase of some laptops, redoing this room to make it more electronic friendly, updating the audio and the video components, and amongst other things for the county IT. The animal shelter panels. If you haven't been down there lately, they've, the dividing panels between each cage is a stainless steel panel that's specially made for the cages to keep the dogs from being able to touch. The dogs have been proven to be able to transmit COVID. So this is an eligible expense to go ahead and finish that out for the whole animal shelter. Something that Chris has been working on for the last year or so, piecing things together, buying a couple at a time. What we're doing is just going by the rest of the building.
Question, Madam Chairman.
Yes.
So dogs transmit it to people, is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know that.
May change tomorrow, stay tuned.
Yes. Wash your hands.
That's why I don't watch TV anymore. I don't, and you know, I've been around dogs for 60 years
Oh,
now.
that's right, you do deal with dogs.
Huh?
I forgot you dealt with
You know,
dogs.
I didn't, I always, and we vaccinated them for the coronavirus ever since I've been 10 years old. And dogs get corona, but I've never known, I don't know, I think our damn scientists has went crazy. But while we're on the dog pound, can I bring something up?
Yes.
They're still not taking dogs in?
We actually just put a release out today. They're going to start, they're opening back up Tuesday after Labor Day. They're finishing up the floor. They had to redo the floor from the inspection, recoating the floors. So they're getting that done this weekend, hopefully. And the plan is to open it back up by appointment on the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Why was
and
it
then-
closed? Why was it closed? Because of COVID or something?
Yes, sir.
Dogs spread it.
We need to get that taken care of. I mean, there's a lot of strays out there.
Yes.
And if you're telling me now they carry COVID, they don't need to be dumped off at my house.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we provide a service such as a dog pound, the trash dump's being open, and you're gonna find this out, and I'm gonna come at you. The trash dump's been open. They ain't got a dog pound ought to been open.
Sure. And they're starting back.
And if we don't look ahead for a problem, then we need somebody else in charge. I ain't talking about you, I'm talking about who's in charge of that particular problem.
Sure.
I get all kinds of calls.
I do.
We went through this
Yeah, I do
before.
too.
I can't get in a dog pound. I can't get rid of my cats. There's 16 cats at my house and I can't get it. Well, if they can't get in the dog pound, they're coming to Rich Valley or Sugar Grove.
Or
Yeah.
somewhere out in the
So I want it open, okay?
Sure.
I know Sean has heard that from me too, and I know it's a challenge, but it is a real problem in the county.
I agree. It's coming. Yeah. We're fixing that one. The next thing, the mobile dispatch unit, one thing that we realized when the COVID hit the sheriff's department was if we had to close the dispatch center itself, we were out of options. So the only option was a mobile dispatch unit that Washington County has that would have taken, I want to say it was 18 to 24 hours to reprogram. So we would have been without 911 service for 18 to 24 hours. Having this mobile dispatch unit at our disposal, you're not out at any time. You can basically come in and plug it into the wall here at the county offices or wherever and still be able to answer a 911 call.
The other thing, Sean, that when I visited there, and it was emphasized to me that is in a floodplain. Luckily, we haven't had that, but I think it's only prudent to have, some provision made in case.
For backup.
Who knows what we're going to deal with, yeah.
I mean, we built our emergency center in a floodplain?
Well, yeah.
The next item there, public safety equipment. Mr. Harrington approached me my first day on the job to talk about breathing apparatus gear for the fire departments, to try and get some type of standard issued equipment for all the departments. So there's some funding set aside to help make that happen. The next would be is shown as daycare support for the school system. So the school system is they're putting together a program for their teachers and their employees to be able to cover that's through the school system. But there's still a need for the public at large for daycare while we're in the virtual. So there's funding set aside in both phases for that. The library has requested a small amount for some renovations and some equipment, as has the treasurer's office. So those items are the phase one, $2,626,458. If you'd like, we can go over the second phase briefly. It really is basically what we're doing is we're reimbursing ourselves and the school system for a fair amount of things that we've already spent with the second half of the money. The school system's portion would be for the, and what we're doing is we're basically helping our future budgets by funding the school system purchases this year with our funds. The school system got CARES Act funds, but their requirement to spend is 2021 versus in December of 2020. So they've got longer time to spend their money, and they can use their money towards salaries. So what we're proposing to do is to account for the tablets and the Chromebooks and the software equipment through our COVID money to help save our next budget being hit. And then the county's reimbursement for lever accruals and landfill. This is for when we sent folks home to quote unquote work from home, but there was not much, there wasn't any work to get done, but they were still getting a paycheck. We're getting reimbursed for that. We're getting reimbursed for increased costs to the landfill for as you can imagine, people staying home all the time, they're going to have more trash. So we had higher landfill costs, and that's an eligible expense. Another portion there for the daycare support. Chamber of Commerce business classes. This is to support the Smyth Strong Fund through the Chamber of Commerce partnership and to help with the more business classes. Stockpile of PPE and disinfection items. That's 3 towns and county together are looking to put money into having a stockpile and for internal use. Another need, creative use. We have a big need for replacing the HVAC system at the health department. It's going to be a $200,000 plus hit. If you include ionizing equipment in that HVAC that cleans the air, it becomes eligible for CARES Act funds because it's something that kills the bacteria or the virus. So we're going to take advantage of that.
I agree.
And then finishing up the radio read meters replacement cycle is the final, and then we have some money in contingencies for it. Glad to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. It just makes me sick at my stomach because somebody's going to pay all this stuff back one day. I know we need it and it's ours and we need to come up with it, but it scares the far out of me.
I tell you, it's very expensive, the requirements that we have to put in place now to prevent COVID spread and things. It is extremely expensive, and I appreciate you putting this together and all your hard work on it.
It's certainly been a challenge for everybody, hasn't it?
Yes. Actually, we've been better off than putting one big round pen. Everybody got a dose of it, and just who walked out, we moved on. We're going to pay for this for years to come.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's important to use it wisely and to anticipate things that it might, keep us from having to pay out in the future.
Do they need to approve it?
Do you need an approval? Yes, you do. So is there a motion?
The committee
Yeah.
recommendation?
So it is a committee recommendation. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Madam Chair, if I can go ahead just a second. That approval was only for the phase 1.
Yes.
So the phase 2 would need a budget public hearing.
Yes.
And we're recommending holding that public hearing on September 24th at 5 o'clock in order to amend the budget to include the other $2.6 million, and then we'll have the appropriate paperwork for that meeting.
That's further down on the agenda. You want to go ahead and do that now, Sean?
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion to set the public hearing date?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Do you have anything else on that, Sean? Okay.
Go back to building and then-
Well, we've got personnel.
oh, let's skip that too.
Okay. So, next on the agenda is Personnel Committee report. That's on pages 6 and 7 of your packet. The Personnel Committee met on August the 24th. Those present were myself and Chris Ratliff, and the county attorney and staff members. Lisa Richardson presented a revised job description for the scale house operator to clarify current duties of the position. Additional duties have been added to the position that have not been compensated for, and Mr. Udd is recommending a $2,000 annual increase for the position. After discussion, Dr. Ratliff made a motion to approve the $2,000 increase and the revised job description for the scale house operator. It was seconded by myself and approved unanimously. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Is it within, I like the next comment you didn't read. Is it within the budget?
There was a vacancy that we did have some savings in the budget. So this will still be able to keep the budget,
All right, thank you, Madam
it will
Chair.
be covered.
Yeah. I thought that, especially in managing the staff and for things that are already in the budget, that in the future that might not be necessary to come before the committee.
I agree.
So, but I think that's just a statement. I don't think we need approval on that because that just should be understood. So we'll go back to the approval of the increase for the scale house operator. It was a committee recommendation. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Utt presented information on consideration of hazard pay for the maintenance staff who have been working on the front lines to clean and disinfect during the COVID-19 response. The committee discussed with staff different possible options to be considered for compensation, and the recommendation was for double time pay. It was noted that hazard pay would only be paid while maintenance staff are working in a capacity related to a positive COVID-19 case. The funds to cover the hazard pay will be paid out of CARES Act money. Maintenance staff will need to track these hours, and budget lines will need to be created for salary and tax purposes. Mr. Farthing, our county attorney, will work with Mr. Utt to amend the personnel policy as it relates to the hazard pay. Dr. Ratliff made a motion to approve double-time hazard pay for maintenance staff as it relates to the COVID-19 response. I seconded that motion. It was passed unanimously. So we now need a vote on the board. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The problem I have with this is, and I get it, but what about the people at the landfill and everywhere else, and the police department,
There's
we have
actually-
deputies and state troopers, and, I get maintenance and cleaning bathrooms and stuff, but I don't know that we ain't starting to range.
Stations.
Yeah, convenience stations, they're real bad. I don't know that we ain't starting a range war here. So, with that said.
Okay.
We actually did speak to that during the committee meeting, and we have a request actually from the sheriff's office for something similar that didn't make it to the committee meeting, but it'll be on the next one.
But where's it gonna end at?
Right. It's, honestly, it ends when the money ends, because this is all COVID only. It's not something that's general fund expenses, but, I think there is a line that you need to draw somewhere, but, if one thing about the maintenance side, these are the lowest paid that you're putting in the front line to be the first responders in essence for the cleanup.
I agree, but you can also put the convenience station workers there that are there every day handling somebody's trash that come in with it with live virus.
Right.
So I don't know that
They just get minimum wage.
I don't know that we're being fair across the board.
Okay, so what's the pleasure of the board? When we looked at it, I think we came up with about, 75 hours, right? Was that total between 5 employees?
It was.
And of course, like,
date.
yeah,
To
to date, like you said, Phil, that was only that one job classification. So do we want to take a vote and not
One
approve
thing
it?
I'd like to say as far as the convenience stations, when we were in the throes of that, the workers there were told, they were instructed not to handle.
I agree, but
Trash and
they're
not to go.
they're still there in the air,
There.
and they
Yeah.
still got the thing, and you still got the land people that's handling trash, and the reason I bring this whole thing up, if you go back to, before some of you come on the board, Mr. Ratliff, he ain't gonna sleep on me, has he?
No, he's terrific.
Some of them we went through, and you was included, we give raises to certain ones, and certain ones we didn't. Maybe the biggest conflict and fallout I've seen in this county in my history of being here 40 years come from that. Somebody got mad, somebody got hurt. People come to my house, why so-and-so get a raise and I didn't get a raise. Now, we're following the same thing, and I get it, the maintenance people deserve it, but they're not the only ones. So, we're going back to where that we throw that salt and we're saying, okay, we paid the maintenance people because they had to clean it up. And we're gonna cause some ill feelings. And them was some of the hardest, illest feelings I've seen. And it was a year before y'all come, Lord. And am I right, Lisa?
I agree. I think we've already started that ball rolling with some other things we've done, so.
So I don't know that I'm not for this idea.
Okay. I guess we'll take a vote. All right, so it was a recommendation from the committee. All in favor? All opposed? We have 4 ayes and 2 nays. The motion passes.
May I just clarify
Yes.
that that's only if they go in and clean up, correct? If
Yes.
there's
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Yeah.
Only if they go in and clean up where there's been a known virus.
A known
Yes.
virus.
Yeah, it's not just
It's
regular
not
cleaning.
just all the time, regular
Yeah.
cleaning.
It's like, they've even had to come in some weekends, I know. You know, we've had some special
That makes
situations.
it feel a little better losing the vote.
So you didn't really lose.
Well, I almost clarified that before, because but
Yeah.
spaced out for a minute. I just wanted to reiterate that, it's only if
Yeah,
somebody walked in this building and went in their office and had it, and then maintenance goes in and cleans their office.
Yeah.
Same to be said if somebody came to the convenience station and coughed on an attendant and then came by the next week and said, hey, I had COVID last week when I coughed on you, obviously, we would consider that too.
I'm sure that's happened. They hadn't
Yeah.
told it, but I'm sure that's happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
They got a nasty job.
Well, and then law enforcement, I mean, one way or another, we're all probably exposed, you know, in some form.
One thing about the convenience station employees, they just make
Clean up.
minimum wage, and the minimum wage is going up
One, get one.
in Virginia, so in May, so it would just be from now till May.
That's
I think they ought to
noteworthy.
get something.
You want to mention
agree.
that?
It's
Sean,
actually-
are you, I think there's a little bit of a update as far as the justification for this. Are you aware that this is, well, go
Do
ahead,
we
Mark.
have one of our people in this building, I'm gonna ask a question, do we have one of them pick it up from a person that, like what we're
We
talking?
did.
Yes.
We had
We
a
had-
positive case
As a result of-
in one of the departments, and the first person in there to clean up was a maintenance person, and that.
I get it, I just don't like starting a range war, and, you know, I get it, but we had deputies that get it. I had a son that got it from doing his job.
Really?
You know, you just,
I get it.
Yeah.
from the right down here, it's stubborn, tell you know? We let all these people come into town right, and then we pay for it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't compensate everybody. So,
No.
I mean, I'm good with the vote, but I think we're gonna have a fallout from it.
Okay. Well, I think, you know, we'll address other issues as they come up, but this one, I think, you know, was supported. Also, Mr. Ott reported that he had reviewed salaries for county employees and reached out to Virginia Tech to conduct a salary study. The total cost for this project would be $6,000. Park District Supervisor Chris Ratliff made a motion to approve allocation of $6,000 for contractual services from Virginia Tech to complete a salary study. I seconded that motion and it was approved unanimously. So there was a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I will add that going off of Supervisor Call's statement about the minimum wage, this is going to give us, it's going to educate us on where we are in the market.
Yes.
I don't think there's any expectations it's not going to say John Doe should have been making $58,000 instead of $38,000 or something like that. I think the main goal is to see where we are in the market and figure out a plan for getting to a better spot.
Well, I was recently surprised when I saw an ad for an opening in a county office, and it was requesting a 4-year degree with a starting salary of $21,000. I think that's way off the mark if we're asking for a 4-year degree. So I think a study will be helpful just to review and see where we are.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I think we had Virginia Tech do one before that we didn't get much out of.
Really?
So I don't know that we're going to expect much out of this. I kind of feel better about who we got in charge over there and personnel committee going by and saying, I think so-and-so's worth some money, instead of giving Virginia Tech to come down here and go through us, but that's my personal opinion.
Sean, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I did have, luckily, a more positive experience in a previous job with Virginia Tech. There's a new sheriff in town. There's a new program leader that's with the Center for Policy Outreach and Public Administration and Policy Outreach, and they're the ones that would be doing this. I'm not sure who did the previous one. And again, it's all in the data that you put into it, so it's if we can get all the localities around us to participate.
Well, that's kind of the way they done the other thing, based on what Washington County, Smyth County, and every county around them, they said you get the mean part, the middle part of it.
Right.
But again, I think we're handing out money for somebody else to do our job. So, Washington County has a different tax base than we have.
Sure.
Smyth County does, and we do. So I don't know that the mean of 4 different counties fits Smyth County. So I know we done it once, and that's how it come out. And I think you can attest to that.
That was, that's the only one I'm aware of was before I came here. That's been 16 and a half years ago. So it's been awesome. And that was, from what I understand, was an intern from Virginia Tech?
It was, and what the report showed, when the report come out, it showed, well, let's just take a broom sweeper or a class of A, what A mades in 4 or 5 different counties. And that's basically what they do is collect all that information. Now, I don't know whether there was a proposal on what Smyth County should do, but I didn't see in their work where they took in the tax base of each different county and considered that in. So
we can make sure that that's part of it. If there's a formula they can come up with to determine what can you afford what's your market affordability rather than what's just the plain market.
I think it plays a big role in what you can afford. You can only afford so much. I mean,
I would think they could take in things like poverty level and things like that.
May I make a comment, Madam Chairman? After participating in the budget process and seeing that there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to how salaries are established, I'm tired of us going on what color your hair is and what clothes you wear. We need to have hard, factual data on what your qualifications are, what your education level is, and we need a basis to start from, and I believe the only professional way to do that would be to complete this study.
Yeah. Well, it is a very time-consuming process if it's done correctly, and I don't know, Sean, that I mean, I know you're busy with a lot of things. I think it would be helpful. I think that's a very low cost, really, for the benefit. Okay, it's a committee recommendation. All in favor? All opposed? So we have 5 ayes and 1 no. The motion passes. Mr. Upp provided an update on the interviews for the emergency management coordinator position and noted that second interviews will be with the top candidates. They're scheduled for Wednesday, August the 26th. And you had those, and so I guess we'll have a report on that later.
Yes.
May I ask, what's the timeline presently for hiring that position?
In my mind, I would love to have somebody on board, a full-time position on board by the middle of October. I think that's probably where we need to be planning, thinking about notices and all that for whoever.
So do you anticipate that it will have all the information that we need to sit down and do comparative data on the CMS situation by then?
No.
So we're going to go ahead and hire that position even?
Now, so this position is a full-time emergency management coordinator position. Mr. Harrington's been doing that for part-time for 30-some-odd years. So it's basically turning that position into a full-time position. That would be a big voice in what happens with the rescue EMS services moving forward.
They may come in with their own plan.
Yeah. And honestly, Lisa's been part of the interviews and other folks, so we've got, I'm ecstatic with the candidates that we have, so.
I have no doubt. I looked at the resumes. I don't know the final 3 that you chose, but that is going to be a commitment of around between salary and benefits of $90,000 to $100,000.
I think we can get somebody that's in the budget already, that we've already budgeted for.
But that's an additional budget item that we've done just this year.
It's in this year's
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah, but we're looking at how much this emergency management's going to cost. So I just think we need, for full disclosure, we need to realize what we had to already increase to the localities, and plus we're increasing the county burden of a salary there too, so.
I think we need to let our committee work. You know, we were talking about hiring somebody, and we just appointed a committee to look into this, see the
Yeah.
best way out of it, and I think you're starting to concern me. I mean, you just don't grow on trees, and I think we need to give time to our committee to see which way we want to go. Is it good to keep a part-time? Do we want to involve the 911 some way in it? There's 100 different questions to be answered by the committee we appointed tonight. But we're in a hurry to put somebody on board to give us another idea. I think we got 3 good people on the committee. We got an attorney looking at it. I think my opinion on this, others hold off till we come up to a plan. But again, that's just my opinion.
But part of
Not to
this
say that
person-
we shouldn't do that, but I just feel like we need to, I feel like there's still some footwork to be done with this.
Part of this individual's, not gentleman, sorry, this potential individual's job description would include grant writing, correct?
It's so much more than just this plan.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was that would be a component to get them in here, get them on board, and then to go help us find some funding, some grant opportunities.
Sure.
Was that not a component of it?
Sure.
So
But
this-
that's not a surety that there's going to be grant.
Not a surety, but if he or she comes in with a background in that, they could help fund their position moving forward. With
Okay.
grants that could help us with the EMS overall global picture of that.
Okay, so, any further discussion?
I'm off to you, what was we voting on?
No, it was just a report. It was a report that they had their second interviews, and then Sean had mentioned that he hoped to have somebody on board by what date was it? Sean? Yeah. Okay. All right, so moving along, Dr. Ratliff has expressed concern over the use of local EMS staff time during a recent animal rescue. It was noted that the animal shelter is still closed to intake due to COVID-19 transmission concerns. So that was just, do you have anything
Yeah,
further?
it was just a comment. I mean, you know, our rescue guys are top-notch, and it's just using a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito.
Right.
You know, it's a little overkill for the...
What was the rescue? You got me curious. What was
Apparently a
it?
dog got its head stuck through the opening of a wheel, like an aluminum rim of wheel, and I'm not trying to make any light of the dog, they need to be rescued, but do we really send our highly trained fire and EMS out to take care of it?
Send a mechanic out there with his horse work pretty good.
That's my only comment.
I didn't say that, paper lady, please.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a report from the Building and Grounds Committee by Lori.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We had a meeting right before this Board of Supervisors meeting this evening. The discussion was of the Cornerstone building, which we had discussed in the past. The discussion started because of the need for more space for the voter registrar's office because of the increase in foot traffic for early voting. And it's kind of like we opened a can of worms, but it's working out to our favor. As you're aware, before the Cornerstone building was where Mount Rogers Mental Health had been leasing some space for us. In our discussion in the past, we had asked Mount Rogers to leave the building, and we were going to use that for the voter registrar's office. We found out in that time that we were going to have to pay $1,100 a month for internet at that facility, and that is just absurd, and we're obviously not interested in going in that direction. So at the same time, there has been some interest from some local entities in purchasing that building, and I know in the past the county has put that building up for sale and had a very low offer that they did not accept. So I believe it's time to put that building back out. Now, the caveat to that is in the discussions of putting voter registrar down there, we also were approached by Southwest Virginia Community Corrections, who had some conversation with former leaders of the county about utilizing space in the courthouse. And that did not work out, so they have been using a building on Main Street across from the courthouse, and that lease is up for the end of September. It's a practice of all the counties in Southwest Virginia to have space for Southwest Virginia Community Corrections. So in the meantime, what we discussed in the Building and Grounds Committee meeting was to temporarily house them in the Cornerstone building while we at the same time post it for sale and accept offer on the building and put a space for them permanently in the courthouse. So the timeline of that would be beginning September, Southwest Virginia Community Corrections would move in. We would begin building a space for them in the courthouse where they were supposed to be initially. And then obviously once the Cornerstone building is sold to another buyer, then that would be off of our books. In addition to that, we discussed a building use plan that Mr. Utt's going to work on. We have a lot of facilities. We're all scattered out everywhere, and I think it's time we really take a comprehensive look on what is the best use of the facilities that we have and how we can best utilize taxpayer dollars to ensure our offices are being used efficiently and our buildings. So the motion that was set forth was to allow Southwest Virginia Community Corrections to lease the Cornerstone building. They pay the utilities for the building, and then they'll be moving into the courthouse once the facility is completed for them, and also put the Cornerstone building up for sale.
So why was the internet so expensive there?
They need a certain bandwidth for the voters and a firewall. So a standalone building was that's because it's a standalone building and it's not something that's already built in here. We have a firewall in the current building. So what we're going to do is we're shifting around here.
So she's going to stay in this building
to make this work for
good.
short term.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term fix, but it's
before the election.
For this, for this election.
Okay, because I know we had talked about that
And that'll help
It's
too,
an
because
option.
we can, I know there was questions before on how many people are gonna vote early. We don't know that.
Right.
We may have 20 early voters and everybody else still may come out on election day. If
Yeah.
that's the case, then it's fine, they can stay here, but this will at least give us a basis on what to work on for a long-term solution.
Okay.
So,
So this is a committee recommendation?
yes. It was, the motion was made by Mr. Ratliff, seconded by Mr. Call. All three of us were in favor, so that's a committee
All right.
recommendation.
All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Sean, looks like you've got some additional CARES Act funds to talk about.
That was
Is that it?
taking care of that.
Okay. So we need closed session?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to enter code section,
Later, I'm gonna pee on you.
closed session under the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and this is regarding the Jericho tax assessment challenge case.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor?
I'm sorry.
We're now in closed session.
I'm raising your hand. I heard second. Everybody's